Hey everyone. Okay, it's about 7:05 Central Time, so we can go ahead and get started. There'll probably be a few more people hopping in, but before we get started, does anyone have any questions? Or we can go
I
ahead
do.
and
I do.
Yes, go ahead and ask.
I don't know where I am on this. Um, is this an official presentation during the first evening of the NYC climate group? Because I tried to find it on their program of events and I couldn't find this.
Oh, yes, it is. If you go to their calendar of events on the 21st, I think it's on one of the last pages because it's in the evening. There is a 7-day challenge by Gen Z for the Trees.
No, I couldn't find it. Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Hey, okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So, hello everyone. I don't know if y'all can see me, but let's see. Yeah. If we have any questions throughout the presentation, just go ahead and drop them in the chat. And some like basic rules, you are welcome to have your video on or off. Y'all know that this presentation is being recorded, so everyone did consent to that. And yeah, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. So hello, everyone. My name is Roshan Khan, but I mostly go by Rosie. I am a third-year student at the University of Texas at Austin on Tonkawa and Sana land, so-called Austin, Texas. I'm majoring in Plan 2 Economics, Government, and International Relations and Global Studies, and I joined RP this past summer.
Hello everyone, my name is Chung Wing Ko. I'm a senior at UT Austin studying biology with a certificate in sustainability and environmental science. I joined RP this past May and have been working with them over the summer.
Hello everyone, I'm Brian. I'm from McAllen, Texas in South Texas. I'm a junior at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm a double major studying sustainability studies and philosophy. And I've been with RP since the summer. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys tonight. So thank you for coming.
Hi everyone, my name is Mia. I'm also a junior at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm double majoring in journalism and Plan 2, and I'm so excited to be here. I joined RP this summer as well, so just so excited to share.
And hi, I'm Jamie. I'm a new grad from University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. I just started on Wednesday, so go easy on me. But I majored in natural resources and environmental sciences, and my minor was in Earth Society and environmental sustainability. So I really hope you guys have a good time tonight.
Yes, so this is our team, and I'm so excited to be working with them. They are the awesomest people. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and play this video for y'all as an intro. Okay, so welcome everyone. We are Gen Z for the Trees. We are the youth branch of Rainforest Partnership, and this evening Brian is going to introduce all about Rainforest Partnership. And then we're going to talk through, Nia's going to tell us about Gen Z for the Trees, and then Jamie's going to walk us through the 7-day challenge. And then we have a special guest speaker, Miss Emily Johnston. And then at the end, we're going to have time for Q&A. So here we go. Brian, you can take it away.
Hi, like Rosie said, I'm Brian. I'm going to be talking about Rainforest Partnership today. And we're really excited to be here at Climate Week New York City. I know that the question on everyone's mind is how are we going to find a feasible solution to climate change within our lifetime? Now, there's a lot of different discussions going around, but what if I told you there's already a cost-effective, all-natural, already available solution to climate change? You would probably think that's pretty amazing. And the truth is that it is, because there is a solution. There is a solution. It's the world's rainforest. Now, rainforests are important ecosystems in the natural world and holding Rainforests are an important ecosystem to maintaining the stability of the world because rainforests are the planet's original carbon capture. They protect half the world's biodiversity and are capable of supporting the livelihood of 1.6 billion people. And in addition to that, they reduce global carbon emissions by 1/4. Now, the really good thing about protecting rainforests is that it costs a fraction of other strategies that others want to implement. We can protect primary rainforests and create sustainable livelihoods while costing less than other people's strategies. Unfortunately, rainforests are in danger. Half the world's rainforests have disappeared in the past 60 years, and that is a crazy statistic that we have to reverse the trend. Now, Rainforest Partnership is committed to ending deforestation by 2040 or by 2030. During Climate Week, there's going to be a lot of discussions about economics, business, governance, but I think it's really important that we keep in mind what it is we are fighting for and what it is we're trying to protect. So I included this little video that was filmed in San Isla, Ecuador, one of our partner communities, by our CEO, Nyanta Spellman, on one of her business trips to the community.
This lagoon is one of the most beautiful places that I think I've gotten a chance to visit. And this is where Sunny Lodge is. The lodge that's completely operated, managed, and owned by the indigenous community of San Isla in the Ecuadorian Amazon on Rio Napo. This lagoon is one of the most beautiful places that I think I've gotten a chance to visit.
So,
As I mentioned, Sunny Isla is one of our partner communities, but our scope goes much beyond that. In fact, we have 23 partner communities and we work directly with nearly 15,000 people. And in that process, we protect nearly 100,000 acres of rainforest. Now, RP works through our 6-pronged integrated approach that is centered at every relationship we hold, whether with a partner community or a partnered business. Now, firstly, I would like to talk about community engagement and empowerment. This is when we encourage local and indigenous participation and ownership to protect rainforests. Founded on the principles of collaboration and respect, our approach integrates both scientific and traditional community knowledge. We also help to form sustainable livelihoods. We help rainforest communities develop income and generating activities to fit their specific needs and strengths while promoting conservation initiatives. In the Sani Isla community, for instance, we helped establish a group of women named the Sani Warmi who make artisanal products and sell them. And in addition to economics, we also have an interest in science, specifically conservation science. We synthesize and produce scientific research, both biological and social, to support the creation of legal protected areas and initiatives for endangered species. Now, often we take this conservation science and work with our other prong, conservation management and governance, where we work with state, local, and federal governments to support the creation of legal protected areas. Now within this is forest regeneration, and where it is our priority to establish, reinforce protected areas and management across local, regional, and national levels. Lastly, we are focused on global activation. We engage in global audiences through education and the importance of rainforest conservation in order to activate meaningful and effective response. This is where Gen Z for the Trees comes in. We also host a Films for the Forest every year, a global filmmaking challenge that shines a light on the importance of rainforests to people of all ages, offering participants and the general public a platform to engage, interact, and think about their shared responsibility to conserve a planet. We also hold a World Rainforest Day, which CW will talk more about.
Yeah, so World Rainforest Day is basically an annual day of celebration aimed to increase the awareness and positive action for rainforests all around the world. We partner with different NGOs and different organizations from all over, from India to South America and all over the place. This past World Rainforest Day, we had over 100 partners from different continents. And not only did they share Rainforest Partnership's mission of basically celebrating rainforests and celebrating the livelihood supported by the rainforest, but they also hosted their own panels as well as film screenings and shared their own actions and support for Indigenous groups. A lot of other partners that we worked with were actually Indigenous groups themselves, and they raised awareness towards their efforts as well as funds to help support projects such as reforestation, as well as Indigenous land rights, which are vital towards conservation in general.
Yeah, and World Rainforest Day was the creation of Rainforest Partnership, and it was launched, I think, in 2017, and it's grown to be an incredibly widespread celebration. It's literally people from all corners of the world will participate in it. And this summer, Gen Z for the Trees was launched on World Rainforest Day. That's June 22nd, 2020. So Mia is now going to give you more background on Gen Z for the Trees. Go ahead, Mia.
Yeah, hi everyone. So our mission at Gen Z for the Trees is to achieve global net zero deforestation by June 22nd, 2030 by building a digital community of youth who work together to tackle the causes of deforestation from all angles. And now you might be thinking that it's kind of a crazy goal that we set a deadline for ourselves of so specifically World Rainforest Day, June 22nd, 2030. But the reason that we did that is because we are holding ourselves accountable to reach that goal, and we know exactly how we're going to do it. So, Resi, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about our 3 pillars behind Gen Z for the Trees at Rainforest Partnership. The first is to educate. So we need our generation to be educated about climate science, the drivers of deforestation, biodiversity, rainforest ecology, all of the stakeholders in our rainforest, and the importance of intersectionality in addressing these issues. We also need to explain the economic and political mechanisms that influence the environment. We'll talk about history and critical theories that aren't taught in school necessarily. And lastly, we want to connect youth with local organizing, as well as opportunities to pursue a career in rainforest conservation. So our education pillar is very important to us, and it goes right along with our inspire pillar. So part of what we do on our social media is to share uplifting news about clean energy, technological innovations, and really amazing success stories that are coming from all around the world. And this is really important to us because at Gen Z for the Trees, we do believe in the power of optimism, and we believe that we can build a world that is a green future society. And we envision that society through hopeful art and stories, and we encourage discussion and growth in an optimistic way. And then lastly, we also will promote the work of grassroots, especially BIPOC-led organizations in conservation, technology, renewable energy, sustainable living, and so much more. And then lastly comes change. And so this is our pillar that really drives both people and organizations to action. So we want to influence corporations, banks, universities, governments, and local politicians to protect and regenerate rainforests, right? So we're holding people accountable. We also want to compile resources in one place that makes it really easy to get the truth and speak up. And lastly, we want to inform ourselves and others about ways to live more sustainably and to secure a permanent cultural shift in our attitudes towards forests and the environment.
Yeah, so some of y'all might be wondering what sort of sets us apart from the other youth like organizing groups that are out there. And although obviously we 100% like support those groups like Sunrise, Zero Hour, and other groups that are advocating and protesting and getting, excuse me, other people involved. But one thing that we're more involved with is sort of like the other players involved in deforestation. So although we're not going after politicians directly, one of our up and coming projects is about palm oil. So if you've been following us on Instagram, you might have seen our palm oil quizzes and some of our Instagram quizzes about the Amazon rainforest and the background behind palm oil, why people use it, what it really is, its physical properties, and why it's a problem. So this is a screenshot from my laptop of one of the tools that we're using to basically power map palm oil. Basically, we're looking at companies that are having like they're the worst offenders on unsustainable palm oil, and we're going straight to the people that are in positions of decision-making power, and we're going to be holding them accountable, as Mia said. So this map is one of these tools that's just an example of how we're really digging into concrete problems and then the concrete solutions. And next up, Jamie is going to tell you about the 7-day challenge, which is going on this week for all of Climate Week.
Yeah, so happy Climate Week, everybody. So today, as we start this, is Mindfulness Monday, which is our attempt to have you appreciate the natural world. So we asked a bunch of people to take a walk and post a picture of your nature walk on Instagram. And we've been resharing that all day, and we'll probably show you that later. But if you want, you can go and look at that now. I went outside today in Illinois. It's beautiful. So it was a very nice treat for me. Tomorrow is Tuesday of Tomorrow, which is about climate optimism. And Mia talked a little about this, where we're trying to focus on happy stories that involve the climate as well, because the media tends to focus on pretty sad things, but there are a lot of really happy things going on. So we're going to be posting lots of links to podcasts that show brighter futures, and things like the Project Drawdown, which is a plan to get carbon levels in the atmosphere to go down instead of up in the future, which is what we all want. So the challenge for Tuesday is to share a hopeful story that maybe you have heard or that you are excited about from maybe one of your classes, and we'll share that on our Instagram story. Wednesday is Water Use Wednesday. So the challenge for Wednesday is to go the entire day without eating beef or meat all day. So meat, and especially beef, takes a lot of water to get to your table. So from growing crops to feed the livestock to transportation, it's a huge amount of water. And we're going to ask you guys to go one day without eating beef or meat, because it does make a difference, and you will see how easy it is actually to go without that. That's been my big environmental transition recently, as I'm trying to be a vegetarian, and it's honestly not that bad. So hopefully that one will be a fun one for you guys. Thursday is Thursday of Truth, which is all about Indigenous sovereignty. So we want you guys to post a land acknowledgement. So we're going to give you guys a link where you can find out what native land you are living on. And especially in America, right? We don't live on our own native land. And finding out whose land you live on fosters the appreciation for those Indigenous people, and hopefully it'll make you more curious about those tribes and want to research about them and about their all the economic stewardship that goes along with Indigenous people. Friday is this is a hard one. Fast Fashion Friday. So if you don't know, the fashion industry is responsible for 8% of global carbon emissions and contributes 26 billion pounds of textiles to landfills each year. And so our challenge is to have you guys post a picture of yourself in a cute outfit that has no fast fashion brands or products. So things like Patagonia, which is very sustainable, or things you thrifted from Goodwill, stuff like that. Or you could post a picture of clothes that you mended instead of throwing away. I'm excited for that one as well. So Saturday next is Surprise Saturday. So Rosie talked about this. Palm oil is a big part of our project, and stop project of stopping deforestation. So our goal for that one is to have you go throughout your house and find products that actually contain palm oil. So our challenge is for you to tally that up and take a picture of those products so you can actually get a sense of where palm oil is in your house and what it actually is. Sunday is going to be a nice one, Sustainable Sunday. We're going to be posting a TED Talk where we want you to watch, and we want you to post how you think your community could use donut economics. Now, you're just going to have to watch and see what that means to get you a little curious, but it's going to be a great way to see how your community can become more sustainable, and it's a nice little calm way to end this amazing climate week. So make sure that you follow our Instagram or our Twitter, because we'll be posting all of the reminders of which day it is. And you'll probably, if you post, you'll probably see your post on our story. And make sure if you do post your challenge to tag us in the post and use our hashtags for Climate Week and all that. So it's really fun, and I highly encourage you to participate.
Yeah, thank you so much for walking us through that, Jamie. And when we were putting together this challenge, what we wanted to do was make it sort of just like a logical progression of themes. So that's why we started off with this appreciation of the natural world, and then we dove deeper into the educational aspects of things. And then what we're aiming to do is, by providing these links and exposing people to these information and resources for the first time, allow them to actually make a permanent shift in their behavior, because now they'll forever know about these things that are out there, whether that's the existence of Project Drawdown, which is a great source of hope for people, or the existence of the Native Land Map, which is another great resource for people to take that first step towards becoming more of a intersectional activist. And so Jamie had also mentioned we can show y'all our engagement from today, Mindfulness Monday, since we're currently presenting at the end of the day on Monday for most of us here in the United States. This is our Instagram page. And so if you go to our story, you can see that we announced our 7-day challenge, and then y'all can see my screen share, right? I do hope so. I can't see all of y'all's faces because I'm screen sharing. But yeah, here we go. We had a lot of people like respond. They went on walks, and it was great. This person was in Khao Yai National Park, which is this amazing, it's the first national park in Thailand, and it's beautiful there. Yeah, and so if you guys participate in our challenge in the rest of the week, you will also be featured on our story. Oops, did not mean to click that. Okay, and so next up, we are going to transition into welcoming our guest speaker, Miss Emily Johnston. So let's see, just some housekeeping. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat, and then we'll make sure that they get answered. And so yeah, okay. Allow me to introduce Miss Emily Johnston. Emily Johnston is a writer, editor, builder, runner, and baker, originally from Boston. She's been in the Pacific Northwest since 1997. Before co-founding 350 Seattle in 2013, she worked primarily as an editing consultant, but also waitress, tended bar, and built websites, sheds, tiny houses, and natural furniture. Her first book of poetry, Her Animals, was a finalist for the Washington State Book Award. It seems dubious that there will be another anytime soon, though she's very pleased to be part of All We Can Save, which is an awesome book that is apparently coming out tomorrow. So what amazing timing, right? And she occasionally writes a blog post. She was also one of the valve turners who shut down the tar sands crude pipelines in the US one day in 2016. And her dog Mosey is the best person she knows, and her life has been beautifully altered by the orcas she's met. So welcome, Miss Emily Johnston. I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing just so that I can see everyone's faces for a second. And then we have some interview questions for you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Allow me to pull up those interview questions. So, My first question for you is, what first inspired you to become an activist?
Honestly, you know, fear really. I'm definitely an introverted person. You know, as you mentioned, I'm a poet, and I, you know, I had a brief foray into activism in my early 20s when I worked at Now for a couple of years. And then I sort of retreated into my personal life with the intention of, you know, writing a novel, which I did, although I didn't sell it. And yeah, just sort of being a supporter on the sidelines rather than really involved. But I was following climate change very carefully after 1989, when I read Bill McKibben's book, The End of Nature. And I was getting more and more disturbed by what I saw and by the lack of response that I saw happening in the political world. So I, you know, finally was forced into activism again in my mid 40s because I just knew that the world was not headed in the right direction, and I had no faith that anything that I could do would make a real difference to it. But I knew that I needed to try, basically. So.
Yeah, that's a story that I feel like a lot of us can connect to a lot of parts of. And so can you tell us about your experience founding or co-founding 350 Seattle, and then what some of the examples of accomplishments that your team has done on the ground in that community, and then maybe give us an example of like what a normal week in your life looks like?
There's no normal week, that's for sure. But you know, it's really been an incredible journey, which is not a word I would normally use lightly, but it's, you know, starting 350 Seattle was not a thing that I ever would have expected myself to do. And I was one of about 8 people who started the group. We were sort of a motley crew. We really, to be honest, had no idea what the hell we were doing. And we sort of, you know, fumbled around for the first couple of years, and we would show up at, you know, to have a protest against, for example, the oil trains, the fracked oil trains, and other things. You know, we were able to get Bill McKibben to come to one of our first protests, so that brought a lot of people. So we could often turn out a few hundred people to one thing or another, but there was not really much of a sense of an arc, not much of a sense of things evolving in interesting ways. And, you know, we weren't organizers. We were really not very good organizers at all. And then we had one friend who was a good organizer who helped us, you know, get our act together to some degree. But the thing that really changed us fundamentally was that in 2015, Shell was going to start exploring for more oil in the Arctic, and they brought their rigs here to Seattle, which they had been 2 years previous to, but this time they put them in the actual port of Seattle, which is a publicly elected body. So the port commissioners were elected by us, the people of Seattle, and literally the same week that they announced that we would be hosting these huge monstrous oil rigs, the journal Nature came out with an article that said, you know, these are the, you know, half dozen projects that the world cannot partake in and still expect to see a stable climate. And one of those things was Arctic drilling. And so, in other words, on the one hand, you know, the world scientists are telling us we cannot do this thing and still have a stable world. And on the other hand, the Port of Seattle commissioners that we had elected said, like, hey, welcome Shell Oil, come on in, you know, we're very business friendly here. And so we started a campaign called Shell No to fight the presence of the rigs in our bay, and to fight having anything to do with that very ugly, catastrophic business. And a bunch of really good organizers from around the country came in, because obviously this was something that we weren't the only ones who cared about. And a lot of them actually were, a lot of them were young, and most of them were women. And it was young organizers from Greenpeace. It was young organizers from, what other groups? A few other groups I'm forgetting right now. But anyway, they helped to sort of pull together the coalition that we as a local group led on here. And it was an incredible thing, and it got media press all over, media all over the world. You know, we had the kayaks in the bay trying to stop the oil rigs from leaving. And that was a visual that was really appealing to people, because it was very clearly a David and Goliath sort of thing, with all these colorful small kayaks trying to stop this monstrous machinery. And, you know, after the rig left successfully, I was really quite distressed for a while because I had worked like close to 18-hour days for about 6 months at that point. And they left. We delayed them by maybe, you know, 45 minutes or something. And I knew that wasn't the point. You know, I knew that the point was to shine a light on the catastrophic nature of Arctic drilling, and to make sure that they were paying for it, essentially, you know, with their reputation. But nevertheless, it's, you know, it seemed like a lot of work for very little payback. And I was struggling with that. But then friends down in Portland, like, climbed off of a bridge and stopped another one of their boats for 36 hours in the blazing heat. They were there hanging off of this bridge, you know, like 8 climbers, and they stopped the boat from going through. So I found that very inspiring. But the very best thing of all was in September, Shell announced that they were giving up their Arctic drilling. And they said that one reason for it was that they hadn't found as much as they'd wanted. But then a board member confidentially told The Guardian also that they had been very surprised by the amount of protest against the rigs, and they were very concerned about the risks to their reputation. So here was a project they had already put $4 billion into and spent many years, you know, furthering. And there were, you know, several hundred of us in Portland, but really just a small core of maybe a dozen or 20 organizers in Seattle and Portland who had, you know, helped to put a stop to this project that was hundreds of miles away from any population center. And so that was the first time I really believed in what we were doing and the fact that we could make a significant difference. And that really helped change our group too, because it brought a lot of new energy in. We learned a lot about organizing, and we were able to take that momentum and keep growing. So, you know, we are doing, one of our major efforts right now is doing a City of Seattle-based Green New Deal effort. And we still, so that's sort of a solutions effort, right? Focused on the policies that will help us, you know, be a sort of climate justice oriented place. But also we're still very much involved in the resistance fights as well. And, you know, fighting, we here in the Northwest, not just our group, many groups, we here in the Northwest have stopped or delayed every single fossil fuel project that's been proposed in the last 6 years. So.
Wow, that's really incredible. And that's such a powerful story too. So our next question would be going like along with that. A few years later, I would imagine in 2016, you were one of the valve turners, right, who helped shut off the tar sands pipeline and then got into a bit of legal trouble for that. So could you tell us a bit of that story and how, and sort of like tack on, how do you think that young people should approach like the current situation that we find ourselves in? Because obviously more of us than ever are turning out to vote, more of us than ever are paying attention to politics, and there's a lot of different ways to go about engaging with things. So yeah, just tell us about your experience like organizing for that.
Yeah, sure. So there, first was Shell No, and then I think a year later there was something called Break Free from Fossil Fuels, which is an international mobilization that I took part in with some friends. And then in the months after that, months and year or so after that, some close friends and I, who I had met in this work, who I knew were at a very similar place that I was with it, which at that point in time, you know, Obama was still president, and, you know, all of the hopes that we might have had when he initially was elected had been shattered, basically, because, you know, America built more miles of pipeline during Obama's tenure than it had ever built before. And, you know, tar sands development was going like crazy, and tar sands development is the single most carbon intensive form of fossil fuel development. And so we were at our wits' end, basically, and we didn't know, you know, what to do. And we knew the small crew of people with whom I did this, the friends with whom I did it, were all willing and able in our lives to go to prison if need be, in order to try to shine the light on what a dangerous pass we were at and how urgent the problem is, and the fact that nothing remotely to the scale of the problem was being done to address it. And so we thought for several months before we came up with a plan. I did not come up with it, somebody else did, but I was the one who pushed it once somebody else came up with it, to shut off all of the tar sands pipelines into the US on the same day, in succession, going from east to west. And we could do that because the crude pipelines, excuse me, because there were only 5 of them in Washington State, yeah, 5 in 4 states: Washington State, Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota. So my friend Annette and I shut off the 2 in Minnesota. They were right next to each other. You know, we spent months researching the safety of this first and making sure that we weren't going to be endangering anybody or any ecosystems locally. You know, we developed our, you know, protocols around how to make the phone calls to the companies to alert them that we were there and what we were going to do, you know, and tried to figure out, you know, sort of how we could most effectively sort of tell this story of what we were doing and why, and that we were starting with tar sands pipelines because, in fact, those were the things that most needed to be shut down immediately. Like, you know, we can make an argument that fossil fuels are still necessary in most of our lives for a period of time. We can argue over that period of time, but really there is no room whatsoever for tar sands development and continued use of existing tar sands oil. So that's what we did. And when we were first arrested, Annette and I, they were, the charges added up to like 5 years. But that always is just a weird sort of starting place. And eventually we suspected when we did this that probably none of us would end up in prison for more than a couple of years, probably. We talked to, you know, a few, you know, good lawyers who had worked on cases like these. And in fact, my friend Michael, who shut off the North Dakota pipeline, did end up with a 1-year sentence in North Dakota, of which he served, I think 6 months, maybe 7. But the rest of us did not go to prison. And it was actually, for me, a very, the way it came about was very disappointing, because we were actually granted what would have been the country's first full-on climate necessity defense trial, which means that the judge was going to let us argue that we did what we did, you know, that we weren't arguing about what we did, but that we had legitimate reason to do it because we were preventing a greater harm. And very rarely do they let you actually even make that argument. And so we had Jim Hansen at our trial, Bill McKibben was flying in, we had all these folks ready to come and testify on our behalf. And then 4 days before the trial was supposed to start, the judge took it back. He basically said, you can't have people talking about climate change at the trial. You can't have people talking about the uses of civil disobedience at the trial, which was, I mean, that was the only thing. He'd known for 1.5 years exactly the trial we were going to present. He knew who our witnesses were. He knew exactly what our arguments were, and he got cold feet at the last minute. And so we were completely heartbroken. And, you know, the question of going to jail, obviously, you know, it was terrific that we didn't go to prison, and we didn't even get a conviction because he essentially threw the case out after the prosecution made its case on a technicality. So I think he sort of cut a deal with himself that no, he wasn't going to let us have this great trial, but he also wasn't going to, you know, make us go to prison for it, basically, which we otherwise probably would have done because we weren't denying a single one of the facts of the actual trial. We videotaped the whole thing. We live streamed the whole thing. So we couldn't very well deny anything.
Yeah, that is a shocking tale of just like the courage that it must have taken to do that. So yeah, all right. So we're gonna have one more question. I'm gonna tie in the 2 questions we had. So there's that book that's coming out tomorrow, and the question that I would like to ask you for our audience here is the main question, what I feel being 18 years old, going on 19, the main question on Gen Z's mind is how to be effective with our time, because so many of us are current students. There's so much else going on for us. So how to be effective with our time and how to make a real lasting impact. So I would love to hear you talk about like what aspects of climate science are key for youth to have an understanding of, and then what can be done about the political gridlock that prevents science from informing policy. And how does climate optimism play a role in that? And you can talk about the essay that you have in this book.
Sure. Well, in terms of how to be effective, really, it depends on what your particular skills and gifts are. And by that, I also mean like who your community is and how you communicate with them. You know, if for folks who have, you know, a pretty big mic because they write for their school paper, or because they, you know, are professional journalists for that matter, or for another reason, that's fantastic. And, you know, for other folks who, you know, lead a more sort of, you know, traditional life, or a more sort of private life in a way, there are many other ways to be engaged. I mean, I think at this point, we're long past the point where personal actions are enough. We're long past the point where voting is enough. We're long past the point where believing in climate change and arguing with people about how it's real is anything like enough. And most people who don't believe that it's real aren't really open to changing their minds anyway. And so it's not facts that will actually change their minds, although sometimes terrible facts like being in last week's wildfires or hurricanes will change their minds eventually. So, you know, as far as what people need to know about science, I would argue that unless you're a scientist, or unless you're trying to actually engage in public education on a regular basis, it's not about knowing the science. It's about, you know, having persuasive stories to tell, number one, about how urgent climate change is, and number two, the fact that it's not actually too late to do something, because there are so many people who, as soon as they absorb the reality of how overwhelming and enormous a problem climate change is, they go immediately to like, whoa, like we're toast, you know, I can't do anything about that. And that's just flat not true, and it never will be true, not in anybody's lifetime, because, you know, as Naomi Klein says, there are degrees, right? There are literally degrees, and every tenth of a degree, every fraction of a degree that we can change, keep the planet from heating up more, is going to mean countless lives, both human and non-human, and the, you know, the preservation of ecosystems. And so, you know, I mean, we, in order to avoid catastrophic climate change being worldwide, it's obviously already happening, right? I mean, I was, you know, here amidst all the smoke and the wildfires in the Northwest and California just last week. We literally couldn't open our windows for a week, right? And that's, you know, pretty mild compared to being right at the fires. Obviously, there were, you know, hundreds of thousands of people who were being asked to evacuate. Then the hurricanes, you know, the Southeast, you know, got nailed again last week, as it so often does. You know, folks in Louisiana repeatedly, right? And that's just the United States. So this is, you know, climate catastrophes are already happening all over the world, and they're going to be much more consistent. In order to, if we could keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, it'll be just vastly less bad than if we, as we edge up towards 2 degrees Celsius. But even, let's assume like the worst case scenario, and I think we're still on track for like 3 degrees at this point, Celsius of warming, if we don't do anything different. Like, even if we get there, it will still not be too late. There are still going to be lives to save. And that's the important thing for people to keep in mind. This is a marathon. Like, there's no point at which we can say like, never mind, we're done, I tried, you know, because there are lives depending on us. And those of us who have any amount of privilege and who live in the United States, which is still one of the world's biggest emitters, certainly per person, it's absolutely one of the world's biggest emitters. It's incumbent upon us to change our system enough that it can make a difference. And so right now, I mean, for the next 2 months, I would absolutely argue that there is nothing more important than landslide elections in November, because only a landslide is going to keep Trump from pretending like he won, even if, the vote is clear. And, you know, I don't have a ton of faith in Biden as a climate candidate, but he's somebody who can be pushed. And Kamala Harris is somebody who can be pushed. And she gets it. She understands climate change. So, you know, we will have our work absolutely cut out for us if they win. But if they don't win, or if we end up in a situation where there's a constitutional crisis, which is a very real possibility right now, then we are completely screwed, you know, because what happens in the next 4 years could not be more important. And if we can get a Green New Deal going in the next 4 years, then we have a really decent shot at creating the kind of world where we're back on track to, you know, to start heading in the other direction again, you know, to start talking about drawdown, to start talking about, you know, zeroing out our emissions, not just, you know, carbon neutral, but carbon zero. You know, all sorts of possibilities become real if we win this election. But if we don't, you know, it gets, our odds get really, truly terrifying. So. I would argue that for now, that is the single most important thing anybody could be doing. And for young folks, especially those who can't vote, the most important thing is talking to your parents and grandparents, honestly, because they'll listen to you and they won't listen to people like, you know, crazy radicals like me in Seattle, or, you know, any number of other folks. But they will generally listen to their kids and grandkids.
Yeah. Thank you. That is so important to hear. And I think you hit a lot of the points that have been on our minds too, as we are approaching the election. Like, okay, I'm going to go in like backwards order from everything you just mentioned. I finally got my father, who is 60 years old this year, to register to vote for the first time. So I was delighted about that.
Awesome.
And yeah, I think that what you mentioned about this being a marathon, and at no point can we say like, okay, we give up because we tried once. That's something really important for us to know as well. Being youth who haven't had like a sort of lifetime's worth of experiences and challenges and setbacks and then like triumphs the way an organizer like you has, it's good to be reminded from someone who has gone through this themselves that this is a whole marathon and not something that we're alone in the fight. Yeah, and I think that, as you mentioned, it's important to take note of our privilege for folks in America or in the UK to do the best we can, connect with other people, and do our best to just envision that future first and then work towards that bright, shiny future, which is part of Gen Z for the Trees' goal, is to shift that narrative, because I could sense that change in your voice when you went from talking about the difficulties of resisting the fossil fuel companies to the wonderful part about just like envisioning the way that we can turn this all around and how there is still so much hope. So on that note, thank you so much, Emily, for speaking with us and bringing this perspective to our meeting and talking to our whole team, to everyone who's going to listen.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Does the audience have any questions? We have a slide I can return to screen sharing, or y'all can feel free to unmute or turn your cameras on if you want to ask us a question. We can answer questions. You could ask Emily a question. You could ask any of our team members a question about our background. A lot of us are like multilingual. We come from diverse backgrounds and we've had some experience being in the rainforest. So if you have any questions about what it's like there, or how what we're studying relates to what we're trying to do in the future, or how you can make a difference, just go ahead and like ask any questions.
I wanted to ask a question. First of all, I want to say thank you. I really enjoyed this. It was worth staying up at 2 in the morning for. But I wanted to ask why you felt that it was necessary to create a Gen Z branch of the Rainforest Partnership, like what you felt we would be able to bring.
That's a great question. So I think that part of what spurred this is, okay, so there's a twofold story. I joined RP this past summer in June as like an intern, and then one of the first things I did was watch this webinar about Generation Z or Generation Z and how we interact differently with brands and companies. Turns out that we are 40% of the world's consumers, and by 2026 we'll be 40% of the workforce. And so yeah, blows your mind. But you can check out WP Engine. This is like a cited statistic. I swear I'm not making it up. So our generation is so much more powerful than we realize. So part of the reason that we wanted to launch the Gen Z for the Trees branch at RP is because given the way the coronavirus made everything go remote and virtual, we wanted to have a digital breakthrough to get rainforest conservation specifically on the radar of young folks. Because as I'm sure most of y'all are like on social media or something like that, I know that y'all have heard about Greta Thunberg. We all know that there's a lot of organizing going on about climate activism in general. But when it comes to like making that lasting change, first, you know, educating people, inspiring them to envision the future that we want, and then making the impact, they have to sort of know the things that go into that. And protecting rainforests and regenerating rainforests is a major part of that. And a lot of the youth organizing like organizations throughout the world are focused on so many different things. A lot of them is like pushing back against fossil fuel companies and like lobbying politicians, that they're spread a little bit thin. And because RP has so much work specifically on the ground, we have our Peru team doing amazing work on all different kinds of projects throughout the country. Same thing in Ecuador, to work directly with people who live in the rainforest, because I mean, it feels remote to us being up in the UK as you are, or in the United States, but you know, the Amazon is a real place. People really live there. There are literal trees and literal animals and literal physical things, physical spaces to protect, and that needs to be on people's maps, because it's also easy to sort of get swamped on social media with a lot of content that isn't useful. It's mostly sort of just for entertainment. And like nothing wrong with that, because everyone needs some joy in their lives, of course. But yeah, mostly our objective is to bring rainforest conservation to focus for youth, and so that we can all use our power to go directly to the source of the problems in some case. So for example, our palm oil project is going to go like straight to the companies that are having farms that are responsible for some of the wildfires in different locations, and then write up proposals to them about what they should be doing better. Because if you take that something specifically to a company, they can't run away anymore, because there's literally nothing they can do. It's not as though you send a petition, like a vague petition to the CEO of the company. Like the CEO is probably not going to know what you're talking about. But if you go specifically to the people sort of in the middle parts of the organization that are responsible for like making these decisions directly, then you're more likely to have an impact. And so we wanted to just bring all of this organizing wisdom along with the climate science education, the rainforest specific education to youth, because we're going to be the ones who sort of carry this forward. That was a super long answer, sorry.
It's okay, that made a lot of sense, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question pertaining to the indigenous communities in these rainforests.
Mm-hmm.
So I know a lot of times, sometimes like these nonprofits can go in and just take over their culture, but from what y'all are saying, it doesn't sound like y'all are doing that. But what are the ways that you, like, I know some indigenous communities have cutting rituals and practices that involve rainforests. So do y'all try to shy them away from that, or do you help them see, like, how do y'all engage with that?
That's a good question, and I could answer that. Brian, you can pitch in. I see you turn your camera on, and if anyone wants to pitch in, go for it. You can cut me off. But basically, we do not try to impose like ideas on indigenous communities at all. Like, we know that conservation is a lot more complicated than like trees. Like, I know in our name, Gen Z for the Trees makes it sound a little bit simplified, but like one of our major goals with the education things is really to combat the oversimplification of conservation work. So you'll see a lot of like campaigns to like plant 1 trillion trees, and like that's great. If people are excited about that, amazing. That's part of that inspiration thing. But you have to ask, like, what kind of trees are they planting, whether they're native, and how like people are going to look after the trees once they've been planted, because a sprout is not the same thing as a fully grown tree. And we know at RP that like trees that are standing are more valuable than trees that have like just been replanted. So it's what we do is work with the indigenous communities and empower them with these sustainable livelihoods, so that they are making the money and they have the stability They have all the resources they need to not succumb to the pressure of the like oil, logging, and agricultural companies that are in the region that are trying to buy out their lands. So that's what RP does. We're like partnering with them. We're not trying to like take over their space or tell them how to run things, because they know best how to manage their homeland. So that's most of our approach. I probably didn't touch on everything that goes into it, but we like set up good trust relationships with the indigenous people, and we are not one of those NGOs that will just go in and leave a bunch of paperwork for them but not actually give them any benefits. But yeah, thank you for asking, and I'm really glad that you know that that is a problem, because some people think that NGOs or like people working in conservation are like angels, but that's not always the case. Like all of us are human and all of us have different, you know, like things that we are working with. And so yeah, that was a great question. Thank you. A question from Raina. For the Gen Z team, what makes you feel hopeful again when you're feeling scared or angry or hopeless? How do you balance both feelings and channel both into activism? That's an awesome question. Thank you, Raina. Does anyone else on the team want to take that question? Also, it's almost 8 p.m., so we should be wrapping up soon.
I can answer.
Okay, go for it, Mia.
Yeah, so I know for me, it can be really frustrating to, you know, find myself kind of spiraling and thinking about, you know, how hopeless our future might be and, you know, how our generation is going to build this future. But for me, I think it's really important to keep that and to channel it and to turn it into something positive. And so I really do my best to kind of flip the narrative in my head. And that's, you know, part of what Gen Z for the Trees is also trying to do, is flip the narrative for our generation and say that, yes, you know, we have lost things and we're, you know, going to lose things. And this kind of, you know, talks into what Emily Johnston was discussing today, but there are still things that we can save, and there are ways to build our future the way that our generation wants to see it. And I think it's just so inspiring, like Rosie said, that our generation is so powerful, even though we don't necessarily acknowledge it all the time. And so I think that's something else that gives me hope and helps me balance both, is just like understanding the power that we do have, because I really truly do believe that Gen Z has the power to turn it around and that we are going to. So.
I think I want to jump in with me and Rosie studied abroad in Costa Rica last summer, and we had the chance to meet this incredible woman named Patricia Jimenez, and she basically founded a women's co-op for like having like economic independence for women in like this really like small area, remote area of Costa Rica. And I asked her like this exact question when after she basically gave like a presentation on like her life and like how she turned her entire community from like no electricity, like no like woman empowerment at all, and then she made this co-op, and like the funds from like ecotourism and all of these things got channeled into giving the children in that community like education, and then like leading to like electricity and like all of these different things that were like super inspiring. And I was like, how do you not get like swamped down by all this like climate pessimism, as like Costa Rica and like a lot of other like low income and like people of color communities are the front lines of the impacts of climate change? Like how do you, like with all the effort that you're doing and like still all of this like is like pretty overwhelming, how do you not get like bogged down by that? And she said like she surrounds herself with people that feel similarly, and they like work together towards creating a world that you want to like aim towards, right? So like the whole quote that like the Rainforest Partnership and she had like emanated is basically, if you build it, they will come. And if you have the willingness and the drive to like create a world that you want to aim towards, and you have people around you who feel similarly, you can inspire each other and basically create a world, and then other people will like be drawn to it to work with you and like create that better future. And another more like realistic, less abstract thing that she said is basically she like writes a lot, like journaling helps out too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer, CW. I was also thinking about like our experience studying abroad in Costa Rica and Monteverde, and getting to talk to all these people And yeah, that's one of the main things that drives all of us forward, is just knowing that there is great work being done, as Emily Johnston told us, as we've all seen, but sometimes tend to forget because of the bad headlines. Like, there is so much reason for hope, and we embody that, and we make it like the case. So on that note, if we don't have any more questions, it's already a little bit past 8 o'clock. So thank you everyone so much for coming. I'm gonna leave us on this slide for y'all, and if anyone has any questions, you can just drop them in the chat, or yeah, follow us on Instagram to keep up with all the resources that we're going to be sharing, like concrete resources, ways to see the great work that's being done, ways to keep in touch with Rainforest Partnership's work. Yeah, and just hear from more Gen Z folks, youth that are all working to make the better world a reality. Thank you everyone so much for coming out.